Hey everybody, and welcome to Wild Encounters at Busch Gardens, Tampa Bay, where we take an inside look at the incredible animals and the amazing people who care for them. My name is Kayla. I'm one of the animal care specialists here at the park, and today I had the opportunity to sit down with Cara, one of the zoological curators who takes care of our hoofstock and rhino team. And she got to talk about all the amazing parts of her career, everything you can imagine about rhinos, and something she's very passionate about, conservation. So check it out. So Cara, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited that you're our first guest on our very first episode of this podcast because you have a really interesting career. You've actually worked for Busch Gardens for a number of years. You have worked with several different animals that we find here at the park. For most of us in the zoological field, we somehow are inspired when we're young. Can you talk about that moment? Like, what made you pursue a career in the zoological field?
Well, thanks for having me, Kayla. Very excited to join you today. And I think you're right. Being in a zoo and working in a zoological field is an amazing experience where it is different every single day. You never know what you're going to wake up to or see when you first get to the park or what the animals are going to be doing that day. Their behavior changes every single day. So asking me how I got involved and the moment when I knew I wanted to be involved with zoo animals is a really big question. I grew up on a farm in the middle of Illinois, and we had corn and soybeans and black Angus cattle. So I was working around cattle from a very, very young age. And I remember bottle feeding one of the calves, and I was so small. I think I was 5, and the calf was kind of pulling me around rather than the other way around. I should have had more control of the bottle. But I knew at that point that I was loving it, and I wanted to be a part of the animal world and help species. So I went from black Angus cattle and growing up on a farm and being involved in 4-H and knowing that that would be a part of my life to wanting to do more with conservation and trying to find where the animal world met the conservation ideas and ideals of people around the world. So when I went to college, I majored in biology, and then I went on to a master's in conservation biology. I knew that I wanted that background, that information. I wanted to know what was going on with the habitats and with the animals, how they were processing, and I wanted to know their body systems, how they could react to the environment, how they functioned. And I ended up in Tampa for a spring break. It was supposed to be warm, and we were planning to go to the beach, and it ended up being very cold, very rainy, and we said, let's go to Busch Gardens. It will be amazing. And it absolutely was. I knew that this place offered such an amazing experience. It wasn't just a zoo, it was a theme park. There were entertainment opportunities, culinary opportunities, zoo opportunities. Everywhere I turned, there was excitement and there were things happening. And it just popped in my mind. I thought, wow, this place has so much to offer. This is exactly how I can combine my background with the conservation efforts that I want to promote for the future. And I stayed. I applied for a position for the summer, and I became a camp counselor, which was amazing. It's definitely a summer job, and one I think everybody should have, to work with kids, to work with them and try to teach them about everything around you. And everything around me at the time was the zoo. So I was taking all of these teens into the world of the zoo. They were around giraffes and around rhinos and around tigers and all of these amazing animals. And they all had a very important message to share, which was conservation. That's why these animals are here. So that's how I got started and how I ended up staying here. I always told myself, if you don't like it, move on to something else. And I have stayed here. It's been 20 years now, and I absolutely love it every single day.
So that 20 years can be traced back to that one rainy day.
Right?
Thank goodness, even though we're the Sunshine State, for that one rainy day.
Thanks for the clouds in the sky that day.
Yeah. So in that 20 years that you've been with us at Busch Gardens, can you name just some of the animals that you've had the privilege of working with?
Absolutely. There are so many animals here, and we have such a wide variety of spaces that they learn lurk around in every corner. So I started in education, and from that department, I moved into the bird and reptile area. So I was working with cetaceans, and I was working with crocodilians, with the alligators and the crocodiles. I was working with so many different animals and learning so many different things. I never knew I would be a bird person or a croc person until you are immersed in that situation and you love it. You love everything they do. You love learning about their behaviors, about their counterparts in the wild. It all comes together. And I went from the bird reptile area over to the edge of Africa, and those were completely different animals in a completely different scenario. There was just a lot of guest interaction. The lions, hyenas, hippos, lemurs. There were meerkats and flamingos and tortoises. There were big things and small things. And there were cichlids, thousands and thousands of African cichlid fish that lived with the hippos. And who knew that the hippos were actually helping out the cichlids and cichlids actually helping out the hippos? It's amazing to see how mutually beneficial animals can be to each other where they're in those multi-species environments, and you don't get a chance to see that everywhere. And from the edge of Africa, I moved over to the hoofstock and rhino area, which, if you've been to Busch Gardens, encompasses quite a bit of space. There are 65 acres of Serengeti plain, which you can see beautifully right behind us. And there are so many animals out there. It's a beautiful sunny day, and the grazers are eating on the grass. We have zebras and gazelles. The giraffes are high up in the trees. It's so amazing to see their activities every day. They all play off of each other. Their social dynamics are incredible to watch. And I'm really excited to still be in that area. There's still so much to learn. I know a lot, but it's new every day, and there's always so much more to learn.
So you've been working with the hoofstock and rhino team now. How long have you been specifically with that team?
Oh, Kayla, you're asking me to count up years.
Math isn't my favorite either. I retract the question.
I think about it, it's 7 or 8. So a good number of years. I've seen a lot of new babies be born, a lot of calves in the mix, new animals come in, new social dynamics happening. It's an incredible time. I'm glad to be a part of that.
And our hoofstock and rhino team were actually divided into a couple different teams, right? Because right behind us, we have what we call South Veldt, and then we have what we call North Veldt. Veldt refers to like this big grassy plain area, so it's very aptly named. So when we talk to guests about South Veldt versus North Veldt, what are some of the animals that guests would see on the South Veldt that they wouldn't see on the North Veldt?
Very good question, and a very watchful eye. Most guests to the park do not even realize that. They see one big Serengeti plain, and even if you look on the park map, it's just the Serengeti plain. You can see it from the train or from some of our special tours that are out on the veldt. And there are different teams that take care of those spaces and those animals because it's a huge space. So we have a North Veldt team, a South Veldt team, a rhino team, and a team that kind of encompasses all of those areas to take care of some of the space, the habitat. And you will see very different animals on both. And if you look at the vegetation, you can very easily see where the giraffes are found because all of the trees behind us are trimmed pretty high up. The giraffes are browsers, and so they can be found on the South Veldt eating very happily up in the trees. And so all of the trees are trimmed up very high in the sky because the giraffes are out there. They're our spotlight animal on the South Veldt. But you can also find some other incredible species. The eland antelope are Adax or Addax, depending on where you're from. It is pronounced a little bit differently. Same with zebra and zebra. We can find those. The Grevy zebra are out on our South Veldt as well. Impala, we have some ostrich out there. It's a diverse space, and I'm so glad to see that all of those animals are out there together. They absolutely have different interactions every day, and with those specific species, they do very well with the sand substrates, the grass substrates, all of the different varieties of vegetation we have out there. It's an incredible area and space if you look carefully. Now, up on the North Veldt, completely different. We have huge oaks on that veldt, and the substrate is very different. It's a very weedy environment, and we have a lot of grazers up on the north veldt. So you can find Grant's gazelle, and we have wildebeest, we have Grant's zebra. The rhinos are definitely one of the spotlight animals that people can pick out very easily. Visually, they are definitely much more a door than they are a window. So if they're close up to the train, you're going to see maybe just the rhinos and not some of those other species. But do look out on the horizon for the kudu antelope and the sable waterbuck. They're both out there too. So it's an incredible variety of species on that veldt as well.
So let's talk about the rhinos for a second, because I worked with several of the animals in the park too, but never worked with any of our hoofstock animals. And I hear from every single person who's ever worked with rhinos that they will completely steal your heart. So what is it about the rhinos that they make them like heart stealers?
They do steal your heart. They have such big personalities. They might be big and gray and weigh a lot, and they look very cumbersome, like a big boulder that's just walking slowly in the distance. But they have such big personalities. They're very energetic, and believe it or not, they can run up to about 35 miles an hour.
No
so
way.
Don't let one creep up on you.
No. And how many rhino species are there in the world?
In the world, there are 5 rhino species, and they're all threatened. And we have 2 here in the park. We have both the black rhino and the white rhino. The one that you're going to see out on the north veldt is the white rhino. And the black rhinos can be found in the middle area between the north and south veldt. There's a cave area right there where our black rhino lives. Black rhinos are definitely a lot less social, and the white rhinos are very social. And there's a moat in between where the white rhinos are found and the black rhinos are found. The white rhinos will come up daily to say hello to Jody, our black rhino. She'll come over and say hello, but she doesn't want to chat. She doesn't want to stay for tea. The white rhinos do. So it's fun to see their social dynamics are just so different. They want to interact, but the white rhinos definitely are a herd animal. Do you know what the herd name is called for rhinos by chance?
I honestly would have just called it a herd. So I feel like that's not the right answer. It's got to be something more creative than that.
It is. It's a lot more creative. When rhinos get together, they're called a crash.
No way.
Which is the best name for rhinos. The charging animal, they get to be called a crash when they're together.
So white rhinos live in a crash, but it sounds like black rhinos are a little bit more introverted.
Yes, they are. They are the antisocial rhinos. So when you find one individually, that's exactly how they prefer to be. So we have Jody, a female rhino, out in between the veldt areas, and she loves it that way. She would have it no other way.
And Jody, please correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the oldest rhinos in the United States, right?
Yes, she is. She's up there in age. Anything over 30 is very good. We always hope that rhinos make it to 40, but over 30 is a very good age for a black rhino.
And how old is Jody?
She is in her 30s. She's at 34.
All right, 34 years old.
She's very interesting. They're built a little bit differently than the white rhinos. The white rhinos have a very wide lip. It's actually how they got their name. It's not due to the color. Both black and white rhinos are gray, but because they have that wide lip, back in the day when they were talking like this and discussing with other people, they said the wide rhino, and they actually meant wide or wide-lipped rhino. The white rhino is still known as the square-lipped rhino, whereas the black rhino, like Jody, has a prehensile upper lip. So it looks like a finger is out talking to you from her upper lip, and she's able to grab produce, grab carrots, grab apples. She definitely likes her produce. So it's an incredible experience to see how her body processes and finds things, looks for you, and then goes in to reach out for produce. Just being there in that moment with her is pretty incredible.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so cool. So we have Jody, our black rhino, but they can also see the crash. Learned that today.
Yes.
The crash of white rhinos that we have. How many white rhinos do we have in that crash?
So we have 2.4, which means 2 in the front, 2.4, we have 2 males and 4 females. Now, if I said to you 2.4.1, that throws into another mix. If we already have the males and females covered, what else do we have to cover? But those are the offspring. If we're not sure of their sex yet or their gender yet, we do that. 2.4.1. Right now on our velt, we have 2.4. So we have Tambo, who is our breeding male, our herd male or crash male, and Viazi, who is our little guy. He was born just in October, so he's only 7 months old.
I mean, we say little, but he's probably not actually little. How big is Viazi now?
You're right again, Kayla. He's not little at all. So Viazi means potato. So
which I just, just say how much we love that name? Because I love his name.
He actually looks like a little gray potato running around there. And he is almost 1,000 pounds now. And Kayla, to put this in potato perspective for you, the average weight of a potato is about half a pound.
Okay.
So he actually weighs almost 2,000 potatoes. So that's what we have running around on the velt right now.
How did he get his name Potato? I mean, in my opinion, very aptly named because he kind of looks like a potato, but like it's got to be more than that too, right?
It's not.
Is it really just that he looks like a potato?
Yes, he looks like a potato. He's just wonderful. He looks like a tank. When rhinos are born, they are basically all feet and all head. And they are just little tank beings from the very start. They start to roll around. They start to take charge. They start to just be their little bolder selves and set forth in the world. And that's exactly what he did. He's had more energy than any of our other calves that we've had here at Busch Gardens. He is a little male. Males are generally a little more active than the females anyway, but he has taken on the velt by storm.
And he's so cute. I mean, I can't blame him. If I was that cute, I'd be running around taking over the place too. But he's still with mom, right?
Yes.
Remind me of mom's name.
Yes, mom's name is Kasiri.
Kasiri, that's right. Mm-hmm. And so he's still with mom. He's still with the crash. And how long do baby rhino calves, stay with their moms?
Generally, they'll stay with mom for 1 to 2 years. So we're expecting him to stay with mom and close to his aunts and other females on the velt for around 2 years. But we will also take into consideration his behavior. At some point in time, he is going to want to grow up a little bit and be a little bit more assertive, a little more aggressive, like a male rhino should be. So we will take all of that into account while we watch his energy level and watch his interactions with all of the other herds out there.
You're very obviously an expert when it comes to all of the animals that you're taking care of on a regular basis. But what's really interesting, in my opinion, about your career is that you haven't just worked at Busch Gardens on site here. You've actually also done a lot of work with animals around the world. Can you talk about some of the conservation initiatives that you've been a part of? Are there any that directly relate to rhinos or the places that they're from?
Absolutely. So many questions, and I'm so excited to answer all of those. Yes, conservation plays a very big part in my life. I'm very passionate about conservation. It's why these animals are here, so we can share the message of conservation with everybody who steps foot in our door. And with conservation being such a big part of why I'm here and what I want to do with my career, I have worked on several different projects with the Conservation Fund, the SeaWorld and Busch Gardens Conservation Fund, of which now I am one of the directors that sit on the board. So one of the most recent projects was with rhinos, and that was with a partner organization called the Emerging Wildlife Conservation Leaders. And through that organization and the Conservation Fund, we were able to do some pretty big things for not only black rhinos, but the wildlife rangers that care for them. I went over to Nepal and was part of an honor and recognition and really a promotional campaign for the wildlife rangers to show them how they can be empowered to really take on this job of caring for the entire planet and how they can do that with other partner organizations, what we can do to help support them, and how we can make a difference for animals like the black rhinos. And part of that was to be very creative. So, when you talk about campaigns, you are developing videos and things for marketing. And sometimes those things, those creative initiatives are a little out of your realm. I'm in the zoo every day, but to be creative in the marketing world is a little bit different. But you really have to look at conservation needing every different aspect. You need to look at it from not only the zoo side, but the law side, the marketing side, media side, entertainment side, Videographer side, there are so many different teams involved when you talk about conservation efforts that it takes people moving in the same direction at the same time to make that effort happen. So we were creating videos and posters and banners and all of this media and marketing material to try to push forth that effort. And some of those efforts ended up happening in Africa and some of the major black rhino countries. So that was a lot of fun to see. That was definitely very impactful for me, impactful for the rangers involved, impactful hopefully in the end for the black rhinos that see the results of all of this work.
And you're talking about rangers. What exactly are the rangers doing to help protect black rhinos? And what do black rhinos, what are some of the threats that they face out in the wild?
Very good questions. Rangers have such a big job. And in many ways, it's very similar to being a zookeeper, where you might be cleaning up after an animal 1 minute, but then out on the sidewalk talking to a guest in the next minute, or working with Jesse, the photographer, the next minute in marketing. And there are so many different avenues to create impact. The ranger's life is very similar. They might be out in the field one day or working in a national park and discussing with guests that come into their doors and interpreting in the very next day. So they have so many different items and efforts on their plate. But one of the biggest things that is affecting, or a few of the biggest things affecting black rhinos, are habitat loss and poaching. So when we're talking about different spaces in Africa, the population is ever increasing all around the world all the time, and people are now found almost everywhere that animals are found, and human-wildlife conflict is going to increase inevitably. So when we find people and animals in the same space, we need to figure out how do we go about saving habitat, preserving what we can while still living peacefully and impactfully for both parties. And that's a very difficult thing to figure out. And you really have to work with people in their locations around the world. You have to work with local people. You have to have enough support from around the world to get the message out about why these plans are taking effect, what the local people want to do, what they see as the best avenue for helping to save these species. It takes so many different people working from different avenues that it's been really incredible to see that for the black rhino.
So it sounds like people kind of from around the world, and even right here in Tampa, could be involved in conservation in some way. So if there's someone who's watching or listening right now, wants to be involved in conservation, what do you recommend for getting involved in conservation work?
Oh, that's a big question too. And I think one of the biggest concerns or biggest challenges is to get people hooked into an idea. They say that once people understand and they have the knowledge, once they understand, they'll start to care for something, but they won't care for it unless they truly understand what's going on, and they won't take action for it until they care about it or that attitude has changed for what they've learned. So I think that taking on small challenges is much easier than the idea of taking on a large challenge. And when we talk about conservation, it is, if you picture a big wagon full of bricks that you're trying to haul by hand, you can't do that by hand, but you can work with people who want to do the same thing, and it makes everything a lot easier. So tackling the small problems. Take on one small thing a day, look outside your window, find one animal, whether it's a bee or an ant or a big tall pine, and learn everything you can about it, and just keep learning, keep sharing, do one little thing every single day.
And for those who might be listening who are interested in pursuing the type of career that you have, and they didn't grow up on a farm, what are some of the things that you would recommend? Because I'll be honest, I didn't grow up on a farm. I'm super jealous. But what are some of the things that you would recommend for someone who wants to be involved in conservation the way you are currently involved in conservation?
There are multiple ways. And really, I know so many people I work with that don't have a biology degree. Maybe they have a theater degree or they have a psychology degree. There are so many pathways to conservation that it's incredible. You can be involved on so many levels. And I think to want to work in the zoo conservation world, I would highly recommend volunteering now, getting yourself out there, starting to meet people. Go to a zoo and find one of the zoo zoo ambassadors and ask a question. Ask them how they got involved. Everybody has a different story. Everybody has a different way into it. But as long as you stay focused, stay involved, study hard, volunteer where you can, whether it's a vet hospital or a zoo where you can volunteer on the sidewalk, speaking with guests, learning the information, it all helps.
Well, Cara, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really, really excited that you got to have the opportunity to come and talk with us. We're really excited that we got to talk with you. But do you have any last minute fun rhino facts that you want anyone to know out there?
So many fun rhino facts. I'm just going to give you a few. So right now there are less than 27,000 rhinos in the world. And if you think about just the number 27,000, when that pops into my mind, I start thinking about populations of cities, and 27,000 for the population of a city, I would probably call it a town. We really need to work on habitat preservation and educating everyone about our rhinos and how threatened they truly are to bring them back to the number that we need them to be at. And I do have a very fun joke for you, Kayla, if you can take it.
Okay, I'll do my very best. Bring it on.
I know you're a fan of elephants, so I'm going to bring this one to you. Okay. What do you get if you cross an elephant and a rhino?
I don't know. What do you get?
Elephino.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, Kayla.
I desperately hope that we can use that. You guys, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wild Encounters at Busch Gardens in Tampa Bay. We're so thankful that you joined us, but we want to know what you think. So leave us a comment below about whether you liked this episode and what animal you think we should spotlight next. Until next time, I'm Kayla, and we can't wait to see you soon. Bye.